Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Celtic Way morning briefing. It is Monday, the 2nd of March. We're into March already. My goodness, time is flying. Time flies when you're having fun. Time flies when you are on the roller coaster that is a Glasgow derby between Rangers and Celtic yesterday. Didn't think Celtic were going to get anything out of that game at half time. My goodness, wow. And then in the second half, there was that comeback, show of defiance at Ibrox to come back and to ultimately, for a lot of people, be quite disappointed to come away from Ibrox with only a point, given their second half performance. I think we've all seen the stat line, how many shots Celtic had in the second half. It was an onslaught, a tale of two halves, a game of two halves. But my goodness, a rollercoaster from start to finish. I'm delighted to be joined this morning by Tony. Tony, how are you doing this morning? Have you caught your breath after yesterday's madness at Ibrox?
Game of two halves, so it was the worst of times, it was the best of times. Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Indeed. Yeah, listen, I think I wrote on Friday, never ever write off a Martin O'Neill team, even when they're 2-0 down. Maybe, if you're being critical, you can say maybe got the starting lineup wrong, but that was rectified, and we'll talk about the reasons why. But yeah, it keeps Celtic hanging on in there, doesn't it? In terms of the title race, bigger winners on Sunday were Hearts, and it's now their title to lose. So, but history tells you that can happen. But Celtic, terrible start, feared the worst, but they managed to turn it round with. And there's a real narrative here about how good Rangers were in the first half, that you thought they were talking about Brazil 1970. But as good as Rangers were in the first half, Celtic were absolutely excellent in the second half. Callum McGregor said Rangers tried to turn it into a physical battle. Celtic turned it into a football match the second half. And they played Rangers off the park the second half. And that, I don't want that narrative buried alongside this. Rangers were magnificent in the first half. Rangers were very good in the first half, but Celtic never laid a glove on them. But both their goals came from Celtic mistakes. Celtic goal that they scored and penalty instant that they got the draw with were both decent bits of football. The Kieran Tierney's goal that gets him back in, it's a right good piece of football. And then you can't underestimate James Forrest's clip to Maida in the centre, which produces better. Brilliant cross, digs a cross out from nowhere. So, but I'm not taking anything away from both of Chermiti's goals. His first goal's a thing of beauty. If you can't see that, I can't help you. It's an excellent goal, and for me, it's up there in terms of derby goals with Davy Cooper's against Celtic in the 1979 Drybrook Cup final. It's a wonderful piece of skill, brilliantly executed. His second one's a well-taken goal, but again, preventable. But yeah, I think this whole narrative that Rangers were magnificent in the first half, yep, they were as magnificent as Celtic were magnificent in the second half, Ryan. So I think we addressed that.
Yeah, they were good in the first half, but they were dreadful in the second half. Rangers were dreadful, and you could hear that. I was watching the game. I went out to watch the game yesterday, so I was watching it on a big telly, and you could hear the Ibrox crowd getting on Rangers back at 2-1. Never mind 2 each. You could hear the crowd starting to get really tetchy because they could see what was developing in front of them. They saw that there was only one team playing football in the second half yesterday for large periods of the second half. Celtic made those changes. They made the necessary changes at half time. They took off the players some of the players that weren't having a massive impact on the game. They could have taken off more than the 2 that they brought off at half time, let's be honest with you. Some players remained on the park a lot longer, or for the duration of the game, which I was more surprised about, but that's we'll maybe talk about that later on in the show. But they could the fans, the home fans at Ibrox could understand, and they could see what was developing in front of them. They could see a team that was, in the first half, Celtic were getting overrun by Rangers in their physicality. Rangers are a big team; they're an imposing and strong team, but that only counts for so long. And sometimes actual footballing ability comes into it as well. And when Celtic got the ball on the deck and started playing their football and playing those nice intricate passes, I think of that Rio Hatate pass for the Kieran Tierney goal. Takes 2 or 3 men out of the game with just one cut and pass. That's the Rio Hatate that we've been waiting on. The so-called Rio Bravo that we've been waiting to come back. It's been a while, but thankfully he showed up. Apart from his nonsense during that penalty, taking 3 attempts to score. I don't know who's told him he can take a penalty.
No.
I think it goes to show how bad Celtic's penalty takers are if nobody's contesting him taking a spot kick. But Celtic made the changes. They brought on Hatate and Tinekti at half time, and I thought both of them were absolutely brilliant in the second half. There was no fear in particular in Tinekti's game. He wanted to take on Tour Romans, who was having a fun time of it in the first half.
Yeah.
Wasn't in the second half. He was getting pegged back and he looked really under pressure. I've heard a lot about Tour Romans since he came to Glasgow, about how, you know, he'd been a great signing from... Yeah, absolutely. But he got a test yesterday against Tinekti, and in the second half I thought that he really struggled against him. So that goes to show you how good a player Sebastian can be when he's on his game. Maybe it goes to show that he shouldn't be on the bench. He should be starting more games for Celtic because he's dangerous. But yeah, second half, show of defiance, and Celtic can feel pretty hard done by that they didn't get all 3 points in the game, weirdly.
I think the second half showed that brain can outwit brawn when you do it properly, when you execute it properly. And that's what Celtic did. That's what the manager said. You know, if Rangers get the third goal, they were a million miles off it. But they had to hang in there. But the ball retention, Ryan, we talk about this a lot, don't we? And Hatate is one of the major culprits when it comes to ball retention. But his display yesterday was top draw. Really, really made a difference. Him and Tinekti, and you saw the confidence coming back into the Celtic side. You know, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, he's a fine footballer, but it just wasn't his kind of game. He's just not up to speed for that kind of game, and Celtic get overran in the midfield in the first half, and also Rangers were playing with 2 up top, went long at times, chased second balls too, but they're still capable of knocking it about a bit and can do that in a decent manner. But I think Celtic showed in the second half how good a football team they were, and as Callum McGregor said, you turn it into a football match, fine. Physical battle, Celtic lost, hands down, and the irony is that's the way a Martin O'Neill team used to play against Rangers back in the day when they had all their own physical players with brawn. And we said for a long time Celtic need physical players. They need enforcers in the midfield, and they need people who will contest and challenge. And I was surprised that Shabara wasn't brought on as soon as Tierney scored, because I thought he could come on and cause utter mayhem. Never came on. Fine, that's fair enough. Again, that's the manager's call. But I was impressed by the way Celtic played their way back into that match, and actually played their way back into it, Ryan. It wasn't luck. Rangers never got a touch of the ball the second half at all. And you said that manifested itself in the crowd noise. You could hear it. And every time they got it, they had no out ball. They were just giving it back to Celtic. So really impressive the way Celtic fought their way back in. As you say, at the end of the game, you're thinking Celtic could actually have won that. And to come from 2-0, going on 4-5-0 down at the interval, that's quite impressive.
Absolutely, yeah. I was just watching a little bit of the highlights there while you were speaking, Tony, just to double check. It was Tinekti was actually up against Sterling in the second half down that side. But I would make the point that James Forrest caused problems for Tour Romans late on in the game as well. So both fullbacks were pegged back and really put under a bit of pressure, which is good to see, and you want to see that from Celtic's wide players. I think as far as I can remember, Celtic's strengths have been in the wide positions, having guys that can both contribute and score goals, and they were making things happen yesterday. Tinekti doesn't get a goal or an assist, but it's what he brings to the team. He brings that drive. In terms of other contributions, maybe less so for what he brought on the park, because I know that he was potentially, he could grab some of the blame for both goals, but Julian Araujo what he actually brings off the park for Celtic is something that cannot be quantified, and something that Celtic have been badly missing. I think that Celtic have been needing somebody like that that's got a bit of bite, that gives a little bit back. Because you see it all too often in these fixtures. You see the likes, and it's the same. It's the same players. You know that they are quite mouthy on the pitch. You've got Nico Raskin, who is a mouthy player.
Yeah.
Somebody like Julian Araujo providing the antidote to that, or the sort of solution to that problem, and giving a little bit back. That sets up next week's or this Sunday's game very nicely between the two. But despite some defensive frailties, I like what this guy brings to the team. I like the fieriness, I like the battle, I like the passion. I think that's something that's been badly missing in Celtic teams over the past sort of year or so in these fixtures. So despite defensively maybe being at fault or being partly to blame, I like what he brings, so I can look beyond that.
I know, but it's a huge butt clause, Ryan. I get what you're saying of that passion and all that, and he's really bought into it, and the Celtic supporters are bought into him. But he's there to defend, Ryan. And he had a helping hand on both the defensive lapses yesterday that caused both Rangers goals. Callum McGregor's put him in a quandary, but just put it in the stand. Rogie does when you are being pinned back and under pressure. And then the second one, and I know it comes from Dane Murray's sclaffed clearance, but he's horrendously misjudged the flight of the ball, and Chinmeaty's made him look incredibly stupid. But up until Ibrox, Araujo hadn't, in a lot of people's eyes, put a foot wrong. But these are the games you're judged on. Yeah. And I don't want you to judge him on his off-the-field antics and he gets it and all that guff, right? He clearly does. We understand that. But I want you to play. I want you to be a defender in those games and do your job. No, not to go all Roy Keane on him, but do your job, mate, And, Callum McGregor, not entirely blameless for the first goal, but he had a chance to howk it, Ryan. Just get rid of it. You're in your corner. You're being pinned. Just get rid of it. And then Dane Murray, And to Dane Murray's credit, I thought, I agreed with the manager. Dane Murray could have capitulated, and but he did win a lot of important headers. But I said on Friday I would rather have went with Benjamin Arthur than Dane Murray, and that's the reason why, Ryan.
Yeah,
I like Dane Murray, but I still think there's a rickets in him, and whenever he makes a rickets in a big game, it usually leads to a goal against Celtic. And I'm not having a go. It's just your observations. These aren't criticisms, they're observations that you're seeing. Your eyes are telling you. But to his credit, he did win a lot of headers after that. He rallied well. But Araujo, I want his talking to be done on the park, Ryan. And I know a winged up merchant and things like that, and a wee bit of devilment that Celtic have been missing. I get what you're saying with all of that, but I need that channelled in the right way in terms of coming off that park a winner and your contribution to be stellar.
Yeah, for me, for Dane Murray, unfortunately, it's the point that I've been making on a lot of these briefings. He does have a mistake in him. That was shown in the second goal, and that's why I'm willing to partially exonerate Araujo's involvement in the second goal, because he just doesn't read the flight, because it's an unreadable flight of the ball. You can't read that. You can't account for Dane Murray totally missing the ball or shanking at the ball and missing it. It was one of those slow motion goals that have been happening quite a few times this season for Celtic, unfortunately, in the big games. And Dane Murray, he did show character to come back and put in a good solid performance, but I want to see that for the whole 90 minutes. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see him responding to a mistake. I want to see him not making any mistakes at all. That's his development. And as much as, yes, he has missed a lot of time due to injury, he is also 22 years old. He's still young, but he's not a youngster in that regard. He's got to learn pretty quickly that mistakes like that cannot happen. He made the mistake against Hearts at Tynecastle. He made a mistake against Aston Villa last season when he was given the opportunity. He made a mistake yesterday. Granted, he showed his character and he came back into the game and won his headers and put in a really good performance in the second half. But I want to see that for the full 90. I don't want him to be needing to rely on a redemption story every time he steps onto the pitch. I want to see that. I want to see a straight line rather than a roller coaster when it comes to Dane Murray. But credit to him, he stuck to his task. He didn't allow himself to capitulate. Martin O'Neill could have easily taken him off and said, right, that this isn't going well for you, but we'll bring on Benjamin Arthur. But he stuck with him, and Murray stuck to his task and deserves the credit for the performance that he put in the second half. But he needs to iron out those mistakes in his game, because Celtic cannot afford to have a defender that's costing them goals.
Yeah, of course, and that is the learning curve. He has to take that, and I'm sure the manager will have told him. But there are times when you have to accentuate the positives as well. Yep, he's made a defensive blunder and a howler, but he wasn't alone, especially in that first half. He was one of a number of players that, as you say, could have been hooked. So, but he knuckled down, and like the rest of the team, grew into the contest, which was great. And as I say, that's something that you say to him, right, you can do this. There's your template there. That second half performance, you were winning headers, you were imposing yourself, because he looks every inch the footballer, he looks every inch the defender. It's just those deficiencies that he has to iron out, or else he won't make the progress that you want him to. And that would be a shame, because there's something resembling a defender there, Ryan, but it's these glaring errors that we keep seeing every time he gets that opportunity and chance to shine. And if he can get shot of them, then he will be worth persevering with. But it's a big if, isn't it? Because you named three of them there. So, but hey, I think you have to give him credit for knuckling down and getting on with it.
Yeah, before we came on today, I was reading Martin O'Neill's post-match press conference. I did have a couple of chuckles to myself. The fact that I think everybody's seen the video of 74-year-old Martin O'Neill running in to try and stop clashes from happening at full time between Celtic and Rangers players. There was also talk about his pre-match celebrations regarding his cake. For his birthday. He said he could have died between 7:30 and 12, which would have made all the celebrating pathetic. He said it was pathetic. He also called the scuffles between the Celtic and Rangers players pathetic as well, and feeble. So that was quite funny. He's not lost any of his sharpness and his sharp wit. I was actually quite worried about what his press conference was going to be like off the back of a defeat. So I was quite glad that Celtic brought it back to 2 each, and he could show off his full repertoire of humour post match, which was good to see. We did touch on him slightly there. Tony, you did mention him. He started his first Glasgow derby, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. I don't know about you, but he just looked well off the pace for me. There was a couple of moments in that first half where. And you see this with a lot of players, and I don't want to single out Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, but there are some players that will come to Scotland and assume that they'll have more time on the ball than what they're afforded, and that was the case a number of times yesterday. Instantly, it seemed as if Rangers were like, right, we'll press onto this guy because we'll get the ball off him if we press, and that was the case a couple of times, and that was unfortunate for him. I'm not in the camp of writing him off just yet, because he had that brilliant immediate impact against Livingston, but he needs to, and this happened against Hibs too. It's not as if this purely happened against Rangers and it was a step up in quality, etc. He needs to learn to release the ball a little bit quicker. If he can do that, then I think he'll be absolutely fine. But in a game like that, in a frantic game like that, in a hostile atmosphere, you need to take care of possession. And unfortunately for an experienced player, he didn't do that in the first half, and that's probably why he was hooked at half time.
It was a gamble that didn't pay off, Ryan. You were gambling with somebody who had experience, or big match experience, and could handle the pressure. And there's no denying that, but there's a huge difference between being fit and match fit. And I think a lot of these players, sometimes their first experience of the derby just passes them by, because it's just 100 miles an hour. It's intense. They talk about it being arguably the greatest derby in the world, all that kind of stuff. You only find out when you're pitched into the heat of battle. And Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain's not a bad footballer. He just got caught in the hop in terms of everything, and it became a runaway train after that. Rangers were, all over him. Mikey Moore in particular. Nico Raskin. So they were having a field day because the Ox just wasn't ready for a game of that magnitude. Right,
Tony, that was a big difference for me in the first and the second half.
Yeah.
The main difference was the impact, and I've got to single him out for praise. In the first half, I thought Mikey Moore was the best player on the park yesterday in the first half, but he was
subdued.
He was shut down. He was subdued in the second half, and he was shut down. And he was Rangers' main outball in the first half. It was clear they wanted to play through him at every opportunity.
So it was no surprise then. So clearly the half-time changes were, right, Chinecti, you've got to come on and make an impact. Hatate, got to stop the supply getting to Mikey Moore, because that's what was happening. Celtic just got completely and utterly overran, and that's what happened. So you take out the same way Danny Rowe noticed at Celtic Park when he brought on Diamandi, and it all changed in the second half for Rangers. It's certainly the substitutes, and the manager is big enough to say, okay, I've called that wrong. This is what I'm going to do about it. You could have kept Ox on the park for his name alone in the hope that he would just spring into life and do something. Thankfully, he didn't, because he needed a result. So you made changes to affect the outcome of the football match. And as we're about to speak about, yep, we've given Hatate a hard time, but I have to have a hat tip to Hatate, not for his penalty exploits, heart in your mouth stuff with that. He got there in the end, so it doesn't really matter. But even then, Maeda was there to stick it in if Hatate didn't put it in at the third attempt, which was good, which I like to see the two of them ran in. And I saw on a lot of social media Rangers supporters complaining that there wasn't a Rangers defender in sight. So I was happy about that. But Hatate's impact, excellent. And I think you touched upon it. See that wee ball into Nygren? That's a Hatate of old. And then Nygren digs out that cross for Tierney's header to get you back in it. It's brilliant, because it's seeing that. Again, I'm going to go back to this whole thing about seeing thing in pictures. That's a crowded box, Ryan. And he's managed to look up and thread the pass, the camel through the eye and needle stuff in a crowded penalty area, and then Nygren, and I think everybody thought Nygren might attempt a shot, but because there was so many bodies there, he probably thought better of it, and he just dinked a beauty in for Tierney, and it's just waiting to be headed home. Real thought process in that move, Ryan. It was a cracking move, a real good football goal. That's what I'm talking about, and that's what was the hallmark of Celtic's second half performance yesterday. The brain beating the brawn. Celtic thought, right, we're a good football team. Lots of people don't give us a lot of credit for being a good football team, but we're going to show it. And they picked the right stage to show it. Yeah.
And Nygren gets another goal contribution. He's getting a goal contribution a game at the moment when it comes to Celtic, either a goal or an assist, and it's a lovely weighted, but it's begging to be attacked by Kieran Tierney, and he's happy. He's happy to oblige with that offer. He did, and it was a good header, and it's his first Glasgow Derby goal. Can't believe it's taken him that long to get a goal against Rangers, but he's got one finally, and it was an important one. I didn't think he had his best game yesterday either, but he was there when it mattered for the header. In the first half, in particular, Tierney, the amount of times that he went back and passed to Sinisalo or went back to his fellow defenders.
Yeah.
You're almost screaming at him to go forward, play with a bit of confidence and freedom. And in some ways that's credit to Rangers, because they were snuffing Celtic out and stopping them from going forward, but I think Celtic were the architects of their own downfall in the first half. They weren't playing with that confidence that we all saw in the second half. They needed a wee G up, and they got that in the second half. An early goal. Kieran Tierney was the man who put the finishing touch on that. All they needed was that little bit of confidence, and they were flying in the second half.
But Nygren influence grew when Hatate came on the park and Chinecti came on the park. He was starting to drift into positions and take up a lot of good space, and he was involved in a lot of things that were good about Celtic in the second half. So I enjoyed Nygren's contribution from that sense, and I thought, right, he does have that in him. Because a lot of people say he doesn't do much other than score. He was involved in a lot of good things yesterday. So I really liked that about him. And as I say,
that's a driving force yesterday, Tony. He got from middle to front.
Yeah, great dink cross. And just everybody got a lift from Chinecti and Hatate's introduction at the start of the second half, and and as you said at the start of the programme, you're actually coming away, and I think the manager said as well that they're a bit disappointed that they didn't win. Because I was watching the Sports Scene highlights again last night. I counted 8 goal scoring opportunities, Ryan, in the second half. The highlights that Sports Scene showed. I wanted to because I saw the stats with the shots on target and all that, and I thought, okay, so I counted 8 real, good goal scoring opportunities. So that's dominance in the second half, as much as Rangers were dominant in the first half. They didn't exactly pepper Sinazalo's goal with shots. They scored 2 cracking goals. It'd be churlish not to admit that, and I've already said that. The first thing's a thing of beauty, and the second one's a great opportunist striker's goal. So, I'm willing to concede that. But Celtic, second half, were all over them and had chances to win that football match.
Yeah, guys, get your questions in the comment section. We'll try and bring up as many as we can. I can see it's a lively one this morning, and we thank each and every one of you for being involved. It's always the same after a derby, but I think the positives are certainly there. If you like what we do, why not hit that subscribe button on YouTube? It is completely free, and you'll be notified when we go live with these videos. All you need to do is press that subscribe button. You'll be notified with notifications on when we go live for pre and post match videos, also interview videos, and the morning briefing. So hit that subscribe button, and if you like what we do and you want to support us online, all you need to do is go to www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe and get involved. You'll have all the press conferences there, you'll have analysis from the game as well as the preview for the upcoming game against Aberdeen at Pittodrie. That's a massive game, Tony. I think that's one that we need to talk about, how big that is. As good as yesterday's draw was, it all counts for nothing if Celtic don't capitalise on their game in hand. And I think, coming off the back of this, we looked at the fixture schedule when that game was rearranged, and we were like, that might hurt Celtic going from Ibrox to Pittodrie. But I actually think they'll have a little bit of confidence going into this game, considering the way that they played against Rangers, particularly in the second half yesterday. They're going up against a team in Aberdeen that are not in great form at all whatsoever. There's still a lot of question marks over who their manager is going to be. They're bringing in interim coaches, they're bringing in interim assistant managers as well to see them through until the end of the season. It would seem they're a team that are kind of caught in the middle between their old tenure and their new tenure. For Celtic, the job is simple: go to Pittodrie and win and put the pressure on Rangers and, more importantly, Hearts, because that gap at the top, 8 points. I know Celtic have got a game in hand, but it's their title to lose at this moment in time. We'll see how they can deal with that pressure. They've never had that pressure for as far as I can remember, so we'll see what happens when that pressure is put upon Derek McInnes's side as the weeks and months go on. I can already see, I've got to be honest, Tony, I can already see a little bit of the pressure despite Hearts winning on Saturday. You look at body language, you look at the way people conducting themselves in the media as well. I think there is certainly that pressure, maybe the expectancy that Hearts are the front runners at the moment. We want that to be cranked up more and more, and Celtic can do that with their on-field matters by winning at Aberdeen winning at Pittodrie against Aberdeen in Aberdeen.
I think you have to hand it to Hearts. They haven't wilted under the pressure yet.
No.
And you can talk about body language and all that, and people making statements and stuff. They're winning football matches. Mm-hmm. They've got 9 to go. If they don't believe they can win this title now, they'll never believe it, right? And
the times that they've wilted have been the times that Celtic and Rangers have also wilted, so they've gotten away with wilting because the other teams are wilting too.
Of course. So, it is theirs to lose. Let's see how you can cope in the home stretch with 9 games to play. But they're still grinding out results. So how are you coping with the pressure? They're coping nicely, thanks very much. I think Peter Grant said it on Sports Scene last night. You'd rather be where Hearts are.
Absolutely.
They are top of the pile for a reason. They're a good football team, and they're proving that they can handle being at the top thus far. It ain't finished. And you're talking about, I never like drawing football matches and yesterday was no real cause for celebration. But what it did do is it gave you the belief that the fighting spirit's there, that bottle, that heart, guts and determination, steel that you need to win a title. I thought, right, show us something, and they showed us something in the second half. So if the Celtic players can't get a lift from that, as you say, it'll be rendered meaningless if they can't go to Aberdeen and win. But you're going there with a spring in the step, and buoyed by the way you played, can you replicate that at Pittodrie? And if you do, you will win this football match. And, you can't control what Hearts do until you play them. Our room and margin for error is negligible now, Ryan. Celtic now have to go on a mazy run of 10 league games and win them all. And the chips fall where they may, but you can only play one at a time. So it's Wednesday night, focus on that. Even the manager said that. The Rangers game on Sunday in the Cup is a million miles away. He wasn't even thinking about that. Our focus now just has to be the next one. Yeah, it's a difficult one against a team, as you say, who are in a state of flux. But Celtic are still the scalp, Ryan. They're still the champions, and people want to beat them. And they certainly want to beat them in order to put a spanner in their title works. Got to deal with all of that. And if you are the best team come May, you will prove it in this run-in. But buoyed by the fact that they came back from the dead against Rangers on Sunday, but now have to go there and do it all again in Aberdeen. And as you say, apply the bit of pressure that you can, control what you can control, and let's see what happens after that.
Yeah, it was a bit like Lazarus coming back from the dead in the second half of that game. Yeah, emerged from their tomb in the second half.
Yes.
You could say. I've started quite a few comments here. Thank you to each and every one of you for coming in with questions, and even just the comments in general. Thank you for keeping it so populated on a Monday morning. I knew it would be busy, but we really do appreciate it, and we never ever take it for granted. So thank you so much. Just bring some of these up. What's the script with Kells? I guess he's been in Kelechi Iheanacho. We play him in Europe, but not in squads for domestic. Hazel also comes in and asks the same question. Now, there was an Instagram update earlier on this morning. I did check in Instagram before I came on because I like to see what the players are up to, and I did see that on Kelechi Iheanacho's Instagram story, he was in Manchester yesterday doing some individual training, so he wasn't quoted, yet he was on the bench. And he came off the bench for Celtic against Stuttgart. It's a bit of a weird scenario, isn't it, Tony? Because that could have been a game where potentially Iheanacho could have made an impact with his ability. The fact that he's played in the Premier League, the fact that he's away for individual training down in Manchester, it doesn't exactly fill you with much confidence. Unfortunately, you can see it in both ways. It's a negative that he isn't involved, but at the same time, you're glad to see him do training and trying to build up a bit of steam ahead of the upcoming games if he is to be involved.
It's a strange situation because you probably get 2 more touches in the ball than Adamu in the first half on Sunday.
Yeah.
And I just think for nuisance value, I wanted Iheanacho to lead the line on Sunday because he's got experience, and when the ball goes up there, it sticks. And he can play people in. Only the manager and Iheanacho can answer why he disappears on domestic match day, but he's around for European matches. Until we get a definitive on this, it's just going to be ripe for speculation, isn't it? But I wanted him there because I just think as well, you can ask questions with a guy like that up top. Just my own personal preference. And as I say, I was still a bit puzzled as to why Shinshivara never came on after the hour mark when Tierney had brought us back into the game, and then he moved Maeda into the middle, didn't he? So I just that's fine. Again, that's the manager's call, but I might have brought him on for the nuisance value alone, just the way I think sometimes. But
for me, it's such a weird situation, though, Tony, because he's playing in European games. He's coming on off the bench in Europe, but he's not. So I would understand if it was the other way about and he was playing domestic games and maybe just doesn't have the the ability. We know he's got the ability. He's shown it. He's shown it in the Premier League for essentially his whole career since he broke through at Manchester City. I actually remember him scoring against Celtic in 2016, back in Brendan Rodgers' first spell at the Etihad. That was the night that Paddy Roberts scored at the Etihad Stadium. It was Iheanacho that scored the equaliser. Shows how long he's been in the game for. It's a weird one where he's playing against the likes of Stuttgart, Utrecht, coming on against Utrecht, and yet he can't get a game against Hibs, against Rangers. These are the games that he would have been brought in for. It's a puzzling scenario, but I'm hoping that he can have an impact before the end of the season.
Sure, that's the great imponderable, isn't it? That a game he could have had an effect in and could have made an impact. He's down posting the Instagram messages, training in Manchester. Again, hopefully somebody will ask the question of the manager about that, and he can give us some kind of definitive in it in the lead up to Pittodrie. So we will wait and see if that the manager speaks about that, because I still think he's an asset, and hopefully, as you say, that he can play some kind of part in this run. And we'll need everybody in the run-in, Ryan. That's the whole point of having a squad. So everybody will have a part to play, I'm sure, in the next 10 games.
Yeah, absolutely. John comes in and says, is it time to drop Casper and put in Sinisalo from now on? Now, before the game, Martin O'Neill said that Kasper Schmeichel was feeling unwell, and that's why he wasn't in the team whatsoever. That's 2 games in a row that Sinisalo has played, and I've got to say I've been quietly impressed by Sinisalo. There's nothing that he can really do about either goals yesterday. Potentially could make a blockbuster save for the second one, but it's a really good finish from Chermiti in the first goal. Yes, it's central, but it's the power that takes it past the goalkeeper, and probably the surprise of a bicycle kick coming out of nowhere like that. I'm not going to put too much blame on him. Apart from that,
nothing.
Sinisalo didn't really have a lot to do in that regard, but he cut a confident figure in his box. He's quite commanding, and I like what he brings.
They say from Romans, didn't he? Start the second half, back post.
Mm-hmm.
That was it, and he made that look very easy, didn't he? No chance for the goals because he's been done by a wonderful piece of skill, technically brilliant. The overhead kick. So, and the hyperbole in that is that people are saying it's the best goal they've ever seen in a derby match. Whatever side of that particular fence you fall on, you can pick lots more. It was a cracking goal. You can't say anything other than that. It was a fantastic goal. Second one, I think he's tried to bail Araujo out as well by coming in. It's a deft finish. He's just been done as well. So these things happen. Chermiti, for all that people have had their say about him, when he puts his mind to it, he can actually play. And again, that nuisance type centre forward. You said to me off air, he's like Morelos in reverse. Morelos couldn't score against Celtic, scored against everybody else. Chermiti's the opposite. So what would you rather have? A nuisance in big games? Of course you would. Who scores? That's 4-2 against Celtic, isn't it? I believe.
That's also.
So yeah.
7 goals, 8 goals in 4 games against Hearts and Rangers. Against Hearts and Celtic rather, because he scored the hat-trick against Hearts. He scored a late consolation at Tynecastle, scored a double against Celtic in both home and away. So it's a nice conundrum to have, and it's one that I would want Celtic to be having. I'd want Celtic to be having a goal scorer that only scores in the big games, because it's the big games that, yes, I know that they carry the same importance as other ones, but they add up. They're 6 pointers.
That's what I was talking about with Araujo. The other games that you're measured in, and your performance is scrutinised to the nth degree. So Chermiti can do no wrong in those games. But yeah, as I say, it was his first one was a fantastic strike. But the Sinisalo, I think he just needs that run of games, Ryan. I think the manager's made the right call in taking Casper out the firing line. He's did nothing wrong in the Stuttgart game and at Ibrox on Sunday, because he came out and he claimed a couple of crosses as well, and he was confident in his handling. So yeah, I think with 10 games to go, I'm looking at Sinisalo playing every one of them, even the cup game on Sunday as well.
Last question of today, because I realise that we've been on for nearly 40 minutes. I thought this was going to be an extended one, which is good because it means you've got something to talk about, and we've had loads to talk about today. I think we've covered all the talking points that we were discussing pre-show, which is good to see. Natalie McMullen comes in. I know she put in a later comment there asking the same question, but I'll just bring up the one from earlier. Do you think that Benjamin Arthur starts on Wednesday night? It's a bit of a weird one. It's a bit of a conundrum for Martin O'Neill, because do you kill Dane Murray's confidence by taking him out the firing line despite having a really good performance in the second half? Do you bring in Benjamin Arthur? There's only a handful of games remaining before the split, and the season's going thick and fast. I want to have a good look at Benjamin Arthur.
So the answer
for me, this is why.
You answer your own question there, then, don't you?
I do want to see him. I want to see what Celtic are working with. I read Martin O'Neill's comments saying that before long this guy's going to be a Premier League defender. It was the same for Jason Denayer. It was the same for Virgil van Dijk. I want to see them in the first team then. I want to see them cutting their teeth and learning their trade if they've got that potential and that ability. If you've got somebody like that is going to be potentially a household name, potentially an England international down the line, why not allow him to do that at Celtic? For me, this is why I think an 18-month deal would have suited both parties. He's on a long-term contract at Brentford. Brentford have signed him up for the next 6 years. I believe very recently they gave him a 6-year contract. They also gave their manager a hefty contract as well, which shows how much they believe in Keith Andrews, who's doing one of the best jobs down south in the Premier League. But he's trusted Celtic to continue Arthur's development. I would have liked to have seen him having a longer deal so that he could acclimatise and then get into the team ahead of pre-season and next season. Potentially that avenue is still there for next season, but I want to see what he can bring to the defensive back line.
I think Martin O'Neill want to see what he can bring to the defensive back line as well, because we know what Dane Murray can bring. Again, you said it yourself, do you run the risk of shattering the boys' confidence by axing them from the team? But you have to turn around and say there is no margin for error here. Celtic cannot afford elementary lapses, concentration, defensive mistakes. So you might say to Benjamin Arthur, right, your turn. Go and stake a claim. Go and show me why you should play the next 10 games, starting at Aberdeen on Saturday. Or 11, if you include the Rangers game at Ibrox. Trustee's unavailable for selection, so go and grab that, go and grasp the nettle. Or you say to Dane Murray, right, Sunday's gone, I need you to be laser focused now, starting at Pittodrie on Wednesday. So I think the manager will have that in hand. I know he praised them and stuff, but I've got a feeling he might want, like you and I and every Celtic supporter, they'll be curious as to what Benjamin Arthur brings to the table. But it's just, is this a game that's just too much at stake to throw in somebody like that? But Dane Murray isn't exactly laden with first team experience. So for me, it's much of a muchness in terms of that call. So we shall see, but I'm inclined to think he might give Benjamin Arthur his chance. So
yeah.
We shall see.
Any other changes you would make on Wednesday? I realise the next time we'll both be on together is Friday. So is there any other changes that you would make ahead of the game against Aberdeen at Pittodrie?
I think Giannini and Hatate certainly staked their claim, didn't they, to be starting at Pittodrie.
Would that be in place of Oxlade-Chamberlain and Maeda?
Yeah, you'd have to say that, wouldn't you? I would think that would be the logical thing to do, wouldn't it? But again, I'll leave that in the hands of the manager, whom I trust implicitly, Ryan. 74, but showing no signs of wilting under pressure.
No, and there was a great social media post that Celtic shared last night. If you know anything about Martin O'Neill, you know that he's a big fan of the NFL, of American football. And he got gifted a jersey by the Green Bay Packers punter, who is actually Irish as well, who recently visited Celtic Park. It's a great sort of chat between the two. I know the two aren't present in the same, but the comments they had for each other, Martin O'Neill still managed to call him young man as well, which was great. I think young man is Martin O'Neill's version of like Ange Postecoglou's mate as well. So they've always got their wee sayings. I do enjoy it when Martin O'Neill comes out with that. That was good for him. Hopefully the second half was a better birthday than the first half in terms of his Ibrox experience. He said he really enjoyed it. It said it brought him back yesterday. It brought back that thunder, which I think the Glasgow Derby can do that to you. And Martin O'Neill certainly knows a thing or two about Glasgow Derby. So long may that continue until the end of the season and beyond, depending on what happens with his own future. Tony, it's been an absolute pleasure being on with you this morning. Been great to chat over which turned out in the end a really positive result for Celtic. Celtic are still very much in the title race, but they must remain there after Wednesday night, after hopefully grabbing all 3 points against Peter Leven's Aberdeen at Pittodrie. That's the aim, that's the focus, that will be the focus going forward. Small matter of a Glasgow Derby quarter-final on Sunday, but before then the league is more important. I'd argue the league is more important anyway at this juncture in the season. That's what we've got to focus on. Aberdeen at Pittodrie. Tony, been a pleasure being on with you this morning.
Aye, pleasure as well, Ryan. Enjoyed that. On to Wednesday night. So you just tick them off one by one.
Absolutely. Thank you to each and every one of you. We've got around about 650, 660 people on the live show. We really do appreciate all of you for joining us. Those who are in the live chat, who make it as busy as always, and those who are watching the video after the recording has ended. We appreciate each and every one of you. If you like this video, hit that like button. Then it means that these videos can then go to more and more people and find more people on the YouTube algorithm. So if you can do that, then it would be much appreciated. If you want to support us just that little bit more, hit that subscribe button, and also subscribe to us on the website at www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. It's the busiest point of the season. You know, we've had the January transfer window now, we're in the business end of the season, so get involved. There's never been a better time to join the Celtic Way, so please do so at www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe and get involved. Tony, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
And thank you to each and every one of you for joining on today's show. We'll see you all at the same time tomorrow. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Monday. Cheers, guys.